Hi, everyone, and welcome to the CuteMonster Show. I'm your host, Vincent Daly. On this episode, I'll be speaking with children's media superstar, Angela Santomero.
Hi out there, it's me, Steve. Have you seen Blue, my puppy?
Who's got the power to lead? Who answers the call for friends in need?
Super wide, super wide.
He's the guy, he's
Super wide.
Who's got the
It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood, a beautiful day for a neighbor. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? Won't you be my neighbor?
It's Daniel Tiger's neighborhood.
Hi, Angela, and welcome to the CuteMonster Show. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Well, you are well known in children's education for your various creations, but I was hoping to get back to the beginning, to where it all started. I mean, presently, you're known for being an innovative creator of quality educational media. But what was the kid version like of Angela Santomero? Were you vastly different from the person you are today?
I was that little girl who could not sit any closer to the TV when Mr. Rogers was on. I talked with him. I believed him when he told me that he liked me just the way that I was. So I definitely was a very imaginative, playful kid, and I grew up to be that favorite babysitter, camp counselor, could not be around kids any more than I was constantly around kids. I was always, an avid reader. I, surrounded by kids all the time. That's just kind of how I grew up.
So it kind of became full circle for you then.
Yes, it really did. I mean, even in high school, I worked at F.E.O. Schwartz in the toy department, and I just remember thinking how you can really, put all the dots together of all the different things that you've ever done, right?
Right.
And how it all comes full circle.
Nice. On your website, Angela's Clues, you wrote about the time you were 14 years old. Specifically, that was when your brother was born and you were fascinated by him. He became your first real child development case study. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yes, my brother really was that first class in child development, right? Watching him say his first words and watching him talk, but then, or even interacting to the TV, right? Like, I have talked about this before, but with Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, and he would kick at the TV, and, I was just fascinated by what, just who he was, and also his questions, right? As a preschooler, reading him books and having him ask me a million questions about what and why and how and all the motivation. And, I just remember thinking how smart, he was. And again, being around kids so much, I just absolutely enjoyed being around some, it felt like my own, right? Like just literally one-on-one like that. And I think that really stuck with me, but also this need for formative research, this need for me to make sure that even 20 years later, I take scripts into kids, or at least my team will take scripts into kids to make sure that we're listening to them and we understand the questions that they have about the scripts and how we can continue to inspire them.
Were you much of a science fiction fan growing up? Did that play a part in your creative development as well?
Not as much science fiction. I definitely was more about the fantastical worlds and jumping inside those worlds in more of the classic sense.
Tell me a little bit about the creative process behind the initial production of your shows. I mean, how does the story you envision mesh with the visual? Do you have any idea what the characters should look like? For example, was Blue the dog from Blue's Clues always a blue dog from the very start?
We did not necessarily know that the dog was going to be blue. We, for every show, there's a different aha moment and something that is really crystallized and visual, and I can see it, right? I can see this little image or this little visual of what it is that we're trying to do, and mostly it comes from the need, right? Like empowering kids. Like, what is it that I feel like we want to be doing next? And for Blue's Clues, it was a game show is what the network wanted. And I, of course, wanted to do education, and so I thought, okay, kids love to play, right? So from a game show perspective, we could do kindergarten readiness skills and get them involved and invested in learning colors and numbers and letters and like all of the things that you would need to get ready for kindergarten through story. And so it became more of that, as dry as that sounds, it became more of that kind of educational pitch of how to get kids involved and invested the way that you would in a game show. And Double Dare was really big for Nickelodeon at the time. So instead of contestants and that kind of interaction, where you're watching at home, you're watching kids interacting in the game, I was proposing that kids were interacting at home, and then I knew all the while that they would be learning. And I talked about that, but I didn't necessarily make that the big part of the pitch. But it wasn't until I was paired with Tracy Page Johnson, my co-creator, and the two of us and our ideas started to mesh in what we wanted to do and how we wanted to see everything come out. We knew that there was a live-action character. I knew I wanted a Mr. Rogers figure, and then a little animated character that would be able to play, quote-unquote, with the home viewer. And because we were talking about the blue screen environment and how we needed, in order to do this, we needed to put the live-action guy in a blue screen environment, the word blue was just something we were talking about all the time, and so it just became really natural that our character would be named Blue.
So there is happenstance involved. Excellent.
Exactly.
So a show like Super Why, which is not necessarily dependent on the color, but more about superhero characters and storybook characters, etc. Do you have an idea in your mind what they're supposed to look like ahead of time? Because, as you know, the visual is just as important to engage a young child, as well as the story, of course.
Oh, definitely. I mean, of course. And what I love about animation is that we can visualize things that you can't obviously see in real life, right? So for Blue's Clues, we were able to visualize Steve's and Joe's thoughts, right, and how to think through something in the way that we played the Clue game and just have that something that was really visual. And also for Super Why, it was so important that we had these cool-looking superhero characters that had power, that had transformation, that had this ability to propel the story forward because of what they could do. And again, the bigger idea was something that I had wanted to do when I was getting my master's at Teachers College, Columbia University. So I wrote it before Blue's Clues, but this idea to get kids invested in reading. And so that was really the first thing. And how do we do that? And the idea that you feel like a superhero when all of a sudden, you really can read and the world opens up to you. And so that's how that started. And then the idea to, because we knew that it was going to be on PBS, they didn't have any 3D shows at the time. So we really wanted to bring that level of sophistication to who these superhero characters are, and create that 3D look for them.
Did you have an idea, though? I mean, how many iterations did you go through before it was finally approved that this is the look, this is what Super Why and the characters will be?
Oh, my God. I think that, like, a ton. Like, we are constantly tweaking, let's put it that way. Like, we knew we wanted these great superhero characters, but exactly what colors did we want, and how are they going to pop from the environment, and what exactly should they look like, and how is their hair going to move? Like, we were tweaking until the last minute, like that, and that's where it's so funny about live action. So when we're shooting Steve for Blue's Clues or Joe, I could be tweaking that script up until the moment that he says that line,
Wow.
And even if I needed to, I could reshoot something if I have to the next time we're about to shoot another episode. So I am such a type A person that like we're constantly perfecting and tweaking. So yeah, and even the Super Why script, I think we must have taken into research at least 50 times before that first, that very, very first episode. So our development time for the very first one is very involved, and we're just constantly perfecting and making sure, because the balance of it all has to really sit, right? Because at the end of the day, it has to be a hit show or a show that kids want to watch, or they're not going to learn anything.
Do you make these changes along the way? Or, for example, if you create a pilot episode of a children's television show and it's animated, etc., are the characters going to be radically different from that first show, or are they just going to develop over time?
The first show is a very strong indication of the characters and the environment and the world, because it's very expensive to be making that level of change when you go to series. And sometimes we do, sometimes we have, but mostly it's tweaking and mostly it's story. When we did Wish and Poof, it was an 11-minute pilot, and we wanted to create a 22-minute episode. So the story arcs and the approach to story changed from the pilot to the series. But the characters were the characters, and then they develop over time the way characters do in a story. And so we're constantly bringing we have rules, and we don't necessarily break the rules, but we advance the story and the character development as much as we can through as we're telling the story as the series progresses.
At what point during the development are you bringing kids into the mix to actually see what you've created and gauge how they feel about your creation?
We bring them in at a second draft of a script. So we have our researchers are experts, first of all, in kids and TV and how kids learn and how to observe who preschoolers are. And what we'll do is we'll take in a second draft script where the researchers will have people to create, artists to create a storybook type of, we call it storybook testing. They'll create visuals based on that script. And so most of the time they're just at the beginning, when something is brand new, they're just literally creating these characters that might not necessarily be the characters we have, but just in order to get the story in front of kids. And then we'll take that into as many kids as we can throughout the tri-state area, mostly in New York, because we can get a bunch of different kinds of kids and different ages and different, all different kids from all over here. And then we're observing them, we're watching them, are they interacting, what kind of questions are they asking, are they running out of the room because they don't want to listen to the story, and then we make changes, and depending on our time, we consistently bring that script back every time until we really feel like we've got it, and then we turn the script into a Leica, an animatic, a black and white version of the show. With it's a storyboard basically that's moving, and we bring that into kids as well. And for instance, in a new show that we haven't announced yet but we're developing, we brought the Leica in 3 times, perfecting and working with our animation company to get it exactly the sweet spot of where we needed it to be.
Are you making use of online as well to get a broader look at what's going on in terms of interest?
We use we use Facebook for parents, and we in terms of understanding what parents are saying and what they want, or social media. People can talk to me all the time through my Twitter, through the blog, and people are constantly asking for certain episodes or certain things. And something like a Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood that I'm so ecstatic about, that has really kind of been one of those shows that parents are talking about. They really have a point of view about what stories they want to be told to help their preschoolers, because there are these little strategies that we have in Daniel that are musical strategies that are life skills, basically, that are helping kids with sharing, with playing together, with sadness, with anger. And so we get story ideas from the parents as well.
You have a deep connection with the legacy of Fred Rogers, who's beloved all over the world as Mr. Rogers. And your children's series, Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood, is a wonderful tribute to the spirit of that work. Now, what lesson do you think he might teach kids to help ease the heightened level of divisiveness that we're seeing today?
Oh, gosh, that's such a good question. And so many times I wish Fred was here, right, to be able to ask him what it is that we would do. And I think that, the thing that's so fascinating to me, and again, that I've gotten to know, was able or had the honor to know Fred while he was alive, and to understand his work and his, child development, and the idea that he really respected kids and elevated who they are. The fact that what he says about looking for the helpers is still something that I'll see go through my feed and go through social media today about what's going on. Like when we're so distraught about what is happening, or if the kids are starting to feel our stress or have questions about certain things. And again, different ages warrant different answers, but the idea that you can always look for the helpers and look for the people that are making a difference and trying to get us out of this situation is something that I think about every day and have shared with my kids in terms of not focusing on the negative, but trying to focus on the people that are trying to make a difference.
I just happened to watch one of your Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood episodes, and the theme was learning how to play well together, and I think that's very appropriate. So,
exactly. Find a way to play together.
Yes.
It's very appropriate.
The digital landscape keeps changing at a rapid pace, as you know. what do you think the future holds for children's educational media? I mean, virtual reality seems to be coming out of its niche form and into more of a mainstream situation. Do you think that will have some sort of integration into children's media?
Yeah, I think that I'm really looking at the science behind some of that for the young kids, because I work especially for Daniel, with such young with the brains are so young and developing, that I really want to look at the science behind what it would be like to put them inside an environment by wearing goggles or doing any of that work for this age group, for the young kids. I think that from an interactive standpoint, it's fascinating to me to watch them play the apps and what we're able to do from an interactive level, where they feel like they're interacting and playing with Daniel and doing it at their pace, right, and doing it in a true way. Obviously, on the show, we leave pauses for them to feel bonded and to be interacting, but when you can see it. And then also these interactive kid experiences, I think, are really interesting, right? Not just live shows, but how you can put a child inside a situation in real time, in a real place, and just watch them play in that sense. I think it's going to be interesting as we, in terms of more and more opportunity for things like that. And then I think from a digital standpoint, it's just that we have more, and I think that really what I think that we have to do as consumers and parents is to be able to have that media literacy around it, right? Like to understand is more better, and which shows are really worth my child's time at this age and this temperament and, the way that my child is. And because basically I'm always saying, when you put on a show, anywhere you put it on, it's like opening the door to your living room, right? You're inviting these kids and these characters into play, and let's make sure that we want them around our kids.
I can't imagine what life will be like 10 years from now if we continue at this rapid pace, which is, it's fascinating to me to ask someone in your position where we're going in that respect. So thank you for that.
Sure, of course.
So what's coming up next for you? You have any projects you'd like to mention to our listeners?
I am super excited that I have a book coming out this spring in April with Touchstone at Simon & Schuster. It's called Preschool Clues. And in it, I talk about a healthy media diet in terms of being smart consumers as parents, and looking at media and some of these stories about how we go about creating our media from a child development perspective and point of view, but also just how we can use media to help parenting, to help our everyday lives, like using a Daniel Tiger strategy, and how, some of those examples of how when you use those strategies in your parenting and your everyday life, how helpful they can be because of peer modeling, because of the pausing, because of respectful communication. I basically break out all the different clues that are in all of my shows.
Very good.
And yeah, exactly. And then some of the personal stories in terms of my story.
Well, thank you, Angela, for joining me today on the CuteMonster Show. It was such an honor and a pleasure to have you on. And I'd like to add a collective thank you from parents all over the world for the work that you do. And I hope you join me again sometime in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
And thank you, everyone, for listening. Until next time, I'm Vincent Daly, and this is the CuteMonster Show, signing off.